Sure did. We had a backup. Good evening to all of you. I'm getting the thumbs up that we're live, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I have a gentleman that's going to tell me if I'm not speaking loud enough and you can't hear me, but if there's anyone else that can't hear, raise your arms, swing your arms, or stand up and make sure you let me know, because we want you to hear everything that we got to say tonight, and we are so pleased to see this large crowd here to hear about this. I'll call it a wonderful project. So thank you all for being here. Since I'm working with the engineers and consultants tonight, the first thing we have to have is a safety moment. So every project and every meeting we have, we start with a safety moment. So the emergency doors are over there on that side of the building in case there's a need to exit. You can also go out through the doors in the back in the lobby that you came in and out of the building, and a door over there. There's an AED in the building in the event if we'd have a need for that. Fire extinguishers is right outside those double doors over there in the hallway. Restrooms are out in the hallway and available. And I hope we don't need this, but in the event of an emergency, 911 will get us all the help we need in a very quick order from the Salina EMS or from the police department. So we're in good hands no matter what happens. So we're going to go ahead and get started tonight. My name's Martha Tasker. I'm the Director of Utilities, and I have had the fortunate duty of being the project manager for the River Renewal project for nearly 20 years now. And I do call that a privilege. I think I hit the button here. Let me go back. Gotta keep my finger off of that. So to get started tonight, I do want to introduce a few people that have worked with me in the city over the last few months diligently on the design of this River Renewal project. So I'm going to start out with that. I'm going to introduce city staff first. John Harvey, he's on the front. I see him. He's our city surveyor, and he has worked hours and hours on property pins and property lines and property throughout the city and knows almost everybody's name by heart. He's met them out surveying. The other is Jim Kowach. He's in the back. He has been helping with reviewing all of the bridges and the roads. He comes with a KDOT background. And so having all of that street knowledge and bridge knowledge on a project named 7 Bridges in Salina is really critical. So he's great help. In the back, Mandy Weber is my administrative assistant. She's not waving, but she probably had, there she is. She organized and put this together and is running the sign-in table for everyone back there. Also, I trying to see if I saw Sean Hennessy here from the city. Sean, you got to be recognized. And I think Jacob Woods thought he would be here tonight. Are you here, Jacob? See, now we're calling him out, Sean. You can tell him I did that. Oh, sorry, Jacob. I can't even see you from here, to be honest. Thank you for being here. And are there any of the city commissioners here? Did you notice, Jacob? Okay. They saw this presentation yesterday, so evidently we did a really good job yesterday and they didn't need to come back today, so that's good. What you'll see will be very similar, and without city staff like we talked about, and good city managers that we have had over the last 20 years, and good city commissioners, projects like this don't happen. So it takes a lot of us to work this out. The other person that I want to kind of make reference to is the Friends of the River. And Jane Anderson, she is the executive director for Friends of the River. And the Friends of the River Foundation is a grassroots organization that started back before 2007. They went out and spent their own money to see if the community was really interested in seeing this river renewal project move forward. I think they spent about $300,000 of their own dollars, so they were very committed, talked to over 3,000 community members, decided, hey, this is a great project. We want it to move forward, so they brought it to the City Commission in 2009, and the City Commission authorized a master plan to be completed. That was roughly of a cost about $400,000. So dollars have been invested in this great project, so we got to keep it moving. That master plan was completed in 2010 and adopted. It went out for a vote to the public for sales tax. At that time, the vote was no, but we heard a lot of people that were really interested in the project. But we'd been through a recession. Sales tax was an issue. It just didn't seem like the right time. So in 2016, we went out for a vote, and at that time, the vote passed. And so that's when the ball really started moving to get this project going. In our presentation today, I'm going to give you a little more background on the project, schedules and costs, and then we'll have Eric Dove with HDR. He will provide a project overview of the RAISE grant, and then aesthetics and design elements will be talked about by Sean Hennessy, and Sean, sorry, Troy, it's really you, Troy, okay, sorry about that. And then Robert on the, so we all have a purpose today to talk about the different elements, and Robert is last because he's going to talk about real property acquisitions, and then was going to be at that time, or what we call today the Tony's Pizza Event Center. And so as we started with the 2017 project, we determined that we needed to have some additional public and steering committee meetings so that we could really find out what does the public want. We wanted to match this project with the public. We had over 4 public meetings with over 350 attending those. The steering committee, which was a group of 25. Eric Dove, the project manager, said I could have 8. But we had 25 applicants, and they were all wonderful, so we took them onto our steering committee, and they've been advocates for the project and really helped us do the right thing for this project and make it match Salina. They had 11 meetings. They last 2 to 3 hours in evenings, so they dedicated a lot of time. Did 4 public surveys, and we had over 4,500 Facebook public meetings. So a lot of public input to try to get this project sized to work for the city of Salina. And what we did is we took a long look at what was decided in the 2010 master plan. The drawings that were presented showed a lot of development out on the riverbanks, and that made a lot of the community nervous, that wanting to know when are you going to buy my property? And really that was just trying to show future development that could occur. So in this project, we tried to be very careful to just show exactly where we're working and what we're doing, so we dropped that confusion. Our real idea was to right-size this project for what we need in Salina, Kansas. We produced a lot of paper to get to this point. And when I say someone was looking out for me on this project, because if we'd have designed what was done in 2010, it wouldn't have got us where we are today with this plan, and you're going to see that later. excuse me. So if we'd have built 2010, we'd been building work around here, but so I think the best point of it is it got delayed and allowed us to really make it match our downtown project, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And when we were out meeting with the public, we found out what was most important to them was they wanted to increase the water quality and to get water flowing through the channel. Number one was water flowing. Number two was multi-use trails along the channel. Number three was improved parks and public access spaces, trailheads. Looking for bridge structures that were enhanced and had aesthetics that matched the area, and amenities for pedestrians. You could walk under them, you could be down near the river. And something that surprised us that came out of this was they wanted to be able to canoe and kayak on the river. They wanted to actually use the river as it was back in the day. And they were looking for improved venues for the public for performances along the river. Future public-private commercial development, fishing opportunities, bird watching. Number 10 was water taxis. And our 2010 master plan was really talked a lot about water taxis, and that wasn't important. We need to get the water flowing was what was important to our community here. Our funding sources is through a local sales tax that was extended from the Kenwood Cove, and we have roughly $17 million there to spend. We have funding from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Ecosystem Project, and their job is to get the water flowing, clean the sediment out. Kind of the short story there is when the flood control levee was built, the 6.8 miles of the old channel was cut off from the natural flow, filled up with sediment. And ultimately, it just killed off the ecosystem and made it a very unsightly area and a storm drainage ditch. So a lot of work to bring that back, but that's the work that the Corps does. That is a 65-35% construction project with the Corps. City share is 35%. I'll talk a little more about the schedule and where we're at on that project. And then the U.S. Department of Army RAISE grant. And Eric Dove is going to cover that part of the project. But the RAISE grant, we received a little over a $22 million grant. And with that, out the grant, for the RAISE grant, I joke with people that our wow would have been a woo. It was not going to be much of a beautiful area because our funding was going to be so limited. That $22 million from the RAISE grant really gives us an opportunity to build much, much more of a project. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the cost of the project because some may be interested in that. Our project cost for construction was a little over $28 million. But the one thing that we had to think about is this project gets built over several years. So we have added about $5.5 million of contingency in there to cover inflation. In today's world, somebody asks, is that enough? I don't know. But it was the best that we knew at that time, a year or so when we put this together. We'll know when we go to a bid letting. And so roughly this project, with the RAISE grant is right at $39 million. The federal share is $22 million, leaves about $17 million left for the city. And to be able to take this project to the city commission on the RAISE grant, when you sign the agreement with them, you're signing up to build everything that was in the RAISE grant, whether it costs more than the money you have. So when you sign up, you're signing up to build the project for whatever the cost is. So I was trying to be honest with our leaders and show the RAISE grant and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers project, which in the future we'll be talking a little bit more of that. I think a public meeting on it maybe in August. But there's some additional costs that go into each of the project, but ultimately the RAISE grant, feasibility study, 4th Street Plaza, and property acquisition and so on. It's roughly about a $46 million project total. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers project as budgeted today is a little over $21 million. We have some additional costs with them for a feasibility study, and we're purchasing some water rights from Canopolis Lake to be able to have water when there's drought conditions and low flow in the river. and it's through the access district, and recreational rights are approved there. So roughly 22 million, 23 million there. So our total project that we're spending on the RAISE grant in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is roughly 69 million. And I was a little short on money when we put that all together and included the inflation, so we had to look for some other funding. We're looking at the dollars from there through the general fund, the utility fund, some ARPA funds from the COVID times, the street and property tax, but ultimately the city's share is $29 million is budgeted now, and about $40 million from Friends of the River and the federal government between the Corps and the transportation grant. So I'd like to say that we've leveraged our money, and we're about 42 cents on the dollar for the project. Schedule, when we look at this, the RAISE grant, we're under design. The design is to be completed in April of 2026, and we will go to a bid letting in June of 2026. And at the end of 2030, we'll be at substantial completion, and you'll be able to drive on the bridges. So it's about a 4-year plus construction project. So a lengthy amount of time, and then there's a few months after that to clean up the paperwork and collect the money from the federal government, U.S. Department of Transportation. The bottom is the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers project. It's currently under a feasibility study, kind of going back and looking at what we talked about before, see if that makes sense. They'll have about 2 years of design and 2 years of construction, but the moral to the story is they'll finish in about 2030, assuming the funding and everything comes into play. And I get a lot of questions, well, isn't funding guaranteed? And I hate to say, I don't feel like anything's guaranteed right at the moment, but we have to play the game like we're going to win, and we got a project, and we're going to get it done, and we're going to get it built. So I just work on the part that's funded. We've been fortunate, the U.S. Department of Transportation, we turn our invoices in. They pay us within 2 days. So all of that's really going pretty well from the funding standpoint. This time, I'm going to pass it off to Eric Dove to talk about the RAISE grant and the components of it.
All right, good evening. Can you hear me okay? Is this about right? So we've talked about a master plan. We've talked about a lot of different components, and I'm calling this phase 1. So we have a secured grant, and it's going to pay for some of the transportation elements. It's going to include things like bridges, but it also is going to pay for trail. What that's going to allow us to do is drain the water out faster so that we don't have an interior flooding problem, and that'll be paid for as part of this grant. In Lakewood Lake, we're looking at a canoe and kayak launch along with 2 pedestrian bridges. So you'll be able to park in Lakewood Lake and walk over the channel and access a trail. So the dotted line that you see along there is a new trail that would go in. The trail will continue down to our first bridge. So the orange with the number 1, that'd be Lakewood Lake Bridge. What we're going to do is we're going to connect the river to the lake. It used to be connected. There used to be a culvert there to do that, so we're going to open that back up. What that will do is that'll help out the water in Lakewood Lake. It won't be as low. It'll be more back where it was historically before the levee was ever built. We continue with trails coming up around into the existing Lakewood Middle School, and then we'll continue up to North Ohio. At North Ohio, we have so much traffic, and we have the kids trying to cross there, so we're going to put a new pedestrian access under North Ohio. So you'll be able to walk under the street instead of crossing at grade. And that'll allow us to connect back into Lakewood Middle School and the existing trail there. During heavy floods, that culvert will also convey floodwater, so it's a multi-purpose, but it will be very rare that we have water going through that. So it's predominantly a pedestrian culvert. Coming up through Riverside and coming around, we'll have another canoe and kayak launch. Elm, Ash, and Iron are all getting new bridges. They're culverts now. Those culverts will be removed, and new pedestrian improvements will be, so you can walk across the bridge. both at Elm and Ash, and the trail will have a formal crossing at those locations too. And then Iron gets a much more decorative approach, and up next will be Troy Henningsen. He's our lead landscape architect on the project, and he'll talk through all the aesthetic elements that were fine-tuned into what we heard for what the community wanted. There's a lot of questions on what the bridges should look like, how do we tie it into downtown and some of the Art Deco features. And I'm a water resources engineer, so you don't want me talking about Art Deco, so we'll let Troy cover all that. Moving on through as we go, just south of Iron, we will do what we call a complete street. So it'll be a street that for special events we can close. So 4th Street is the part between the Car Museum and the river. We'll be able to close that for special events. And Troy will have some wonderful renderings that will show what that looks like. And then as we continue to move south, now we're into Oakdale Park. In Oakdale Park, there will be a building for the city to store a boat so that they'll have access both for maintenance and in emergency events. And there'll be a new kayak launch there too. The building was located in Oakdale because there'll be a flex space, so it will be able to be used during major events like the River Festival. And so it'll be a dual purpose building. We'll have additional trails that then come down through the park and then tie in to the YMCA trail that was built. If you've seen that trail is 10 feet wide. It'll be very similar to the trails we'll be building. And then at YMCA driveway, it also gets a new bridge, and there will be a new canoe and kayak launch facility there. Coming on down through to South Ohio. South Ohio, there's actually a culvert there, but you can't see it. It is completely filled with sediment. We have about 7 feet of sediment there that has to be removed to get the water flowing downhill again. So we'll put in it's actually a twin box, but one box will be for the water, one box will be for pedestrians. So you'll be able to go on the trail and go under South Ohio, just like what you can do at North Ohio. We have a bus stop right there, and right now you have to race across 5 lanes of traffic to get there. So we'll have pedestrian improvements to take you under. And then there's an existing trail that we'll go ahead and pave, and that'll take you into Billbrook Park. So when we're all said and done, you'll be able to go from the levee trail that's there all the way through these new interconnected trails and take you all the way back into Billbrook Park. I failed to mention Midway, and Midway also gets a new bridge. So a lot of elements, and I buzzed through that kind of as a big picture so that Troy has plenty of time to then start talking through the aesthetics and what each of these would look like. I always say Troy gets the fun part, he gets pictures.
Thank you, Eric. So yeah, I'm going to expand on some of these items Eric was talking about a little earlier here. So basically the process we followed was, Martha mentioned the previous effort where we had 25 members of our aesthetics committee. What we did since then is we continued some of their ideas and their thought process that they helped us with during our master planning process. We got together a little smaller group that focused on some of these aesthetic design elements. And what we did is we produced a aesthetic design handbook. So it basically, whether things are in this phase or in a future phase, you can always refer back to this handbook and say, okay, here's the materials we need to use within this certain area if we're adding an amenity area within the corridor. Whether it's in this phase or not, they can always refer back to that and see what was envisioned, at least during this effort here. So some of the items we covered for enhancements on design features were the bridges. So looking at the various materials used in the bridge, different lighting, how the pedestrian handrails could look there. Also looked at the paving and hardscape materials. So are we using bricks? Are we using colored concrete, textured concrete, things like that. Retaining walls, there's different ideas depending on the height of wall required, different types of walls and appearance to those, depending on the various heights of those. Lighting was a big issue, and we'll get into each one of these items a little further here as we go. But yeah, how do we light the trail? What does it look like? We wanted all these features to tie together throughout the corridor. Site furnishings or canopy structures or fencing. These are things like trash cans and benches and bike racks. We wanted all these to kind of look like they all tie together. We briefly took a look at some of the signage and wayfinding features. For instance, you're on the trail, maybe there's some points of interest signage that directs you off the trail to some of these locations. Landscaping is mainly, looking at native materials, use of plants that do well within the climate here that don't require a lot of maintenance or extra watering. And then how does everything tie into the great public art program we have downtown with the sculpture walk and the sculpture tour? So these are some of the things we took a look at here. We thought it was best to break apart the corridor into districts. And within each of these districts, everything would tie together. Like we'd have the same bench there, we'd have the same materials used for the pavement. And we broke it into 3 distinct districts. So Lakewood Park is the first one there, and that kind of has the, invokes nature, wildflowers, big blue stem, the water itself. So kind of themes with nature is what we anticipated to go into the Lakewood Park area. There's 2 areas that we designate in the green there, which are the neighborhood and city parks area. These are more manicured parks, covers Bill Burke Park, Oakdale Park, Kenwood Park, as well as Riverside Park on the north side there. So all these, as well as the residential neighborhoods that surround those, kind of had their own feel as well. And then the area in orange there is more downtown centric. So that's Ash Street, Elm Street, and Iron Avenue there. So we thought that was tied closely to the downtown enhancements there with the Art Deco. So those are some of the features that we wanted to incorporate within that district. So to do that, we looked around town here, some of the local precedents on a lot of the features that already exist. We tried to take cues from those, whether it's the materials, the shapes, the patterns. You can see a lot of the Art Deco patterns on the buildings down there and surrounding downtown. We took a look at the downtown streetscape as well, and some of those elements utilized with the overhead pedestrian crossings that are mid-block. But then, as you can see in the bottom right, there's some great features within some of the existing parks there, Oakdale Park and Kenwood Park, with some of those old WPA-style stone walls and picnic tables. So we're trying to use some features that are seen there as well. And here's just another set of some of those elements we're looking at, try to incorporate similar ideas from. So the first one that we're going to talk about tonight is the bridges. This is a picture of the existing Greeley Avenue Bridge, which is just outside behind me here. As mentioned earlier, there's 7 new bridges in these 7 locations. So number 1 there would be the Lakewood Park Bridge. So that's the vehicular bridge, but as Eric mentioned, there are 2 pedestrian bridges there as well, just on the east side of the lake. If you can see those purple asterisks, it might be hard to see from where you're sitting there, but the 2 pedestrian bridges there and one vehicular bridge. Then moving on to number 2, the Elm Street, the Ash Street there at number 3, the Iron Avenue at 4, and then number 5 would be the Midway Bridge, again right outside the doors here, and then the YMCA Bridge, and then the South Ohio twin box culverts. So I'm going to show you images on what the vision is for each one of these. So here's the Lakewood Park Bridge, and again, we want to incorporate the kind of naturalistic elements. So what you see on the top are 2 photos. Of the one on the right would be limestone materials, more the natural stone to be incorporated in the columns that you see on the bridge deck itself. Between those columns would be a pedestrian railing where we would incorporate some of those features that you see on the top left photo there, which is big blue stem grass, which is one of the main native grasses in the area. To tie all the bridges together, we're using the same lighting style, so you can see those images on top of the bridge. That will be utilized on all of the bridges within the project here. So that's the Lakewood Park Bridge. Next is the pedestrian bridges, which are also both in Lakewood Park. So these are a little different. These are going to be pre-manufactured off-site and then just dropped into place, with the abutments that we'll be building there. So as Eric mentioned, one will cross the existing historic channel, and then there will be another one that'll cross where the connection will be made between that existing channel and Lakewood Lake. So they're not too far apart from each other, kind of generally in that east side of Lakewood Lake is where they will both be located. But as far as the appearance there, they will all be kind of weathered steel, as you see here, so kind of that rustic type of color. That'll have a concrete floor on it, not wood planks like you see in that bottom right photo, but more like the middle photo with a concrete decking on that. The next bridge moves into the downtown district. So Elm Street, Ash Street, and Iron Avenue all kind of have features of Art Deco. So we're trying to tie that together with the downtown features there. So some of the things we're looking at utilizing there are the similar brick colors to what you see in the downtown streetscape along Santa Fe Avenue. So kind of the two tones of brick colors. Within the columns here on the top side of the bridge, we're incorporating that chevron shape that you see in downtown on sidewalks as well. So that helps tie that together with that. And then on Elm Street, the pedestrian railing at the top of the bridge would incorporate that. This bridge would be the circular pattern that you see there, a Art Deco pattern. So again, turning it from a culvert currently to opening up quite a bit underneath there to really allow the water to flow through there. Ash Street is pretty similar to the Elm Street one, except it just has a different Art Deco pattern for the pedestrian fencing up top. Other than that, they're fairly close. Again, the same lighting, the same brick columns that you see there on both those bridges. The Iron Avenue one is the bridge that we see as being the gem of all the bridges we're putting in. We feel like that's the one that would be closest to the gathering, a big gathering space there. It's the closest point to downtown Santa Fe Avenue. And we really have a lot more opportunities to incorporate some of these aesthetic enhancements. You notice underneath the bridge on the left side, that'll be a boardwalk connection, so we'll be able to get right down there at the water's edge. The boardwalk will be raised about 1.5 feet above the water surface. So that'll be going in as part of this phase, that boardwalk will. On the other side of the bridge, on the right side there, that's a future connection for the multi-use trail to go underneath there now. Just due to funding and it would require a lot of retaining walls to get down there at this phase. We had to bypass that particular location for the trail in this phase, but the plan is in future phases to make that connection. On the sloping walls that go up to the top would be, again, using those same two brick colors in a random pattern to help tie that together. The columns themselves are going to be concrete on this one, so similar to the existing bridge now where all the concrete columns are there currently. But between those concrete columns, and the shape of those columns will be similar to the downtown street monuments where it has the street names on them along Santa Fe Avenue. Similar shape to that, as well as the columns that hold those overhead pedestrian crossing panels as well. So again, the same lighting would go here that you see elsewhere. The pattern on the pedestrian railing would be similar to what you see downtown on Santa Fe Avenue on those pedestrian crossings. And this one will have a lot more enhancements for lighting as well. We heard, the love for the color changing lights that we see downtown. So there's an opportunity to, underneath the bridge, to have some of the color changing elements, LED lighting underneath there, as well as some panels that'll be backlit on you can kind of see those orange rectangles there. Those are intended to be backlit metal panels with that similar pattern there too. So Iron Avenue, is definitely a nice gem there along the corridor. So now we're moving into the Parks and Neighborhood District, and this is the Midway Bridge right out front here. Again, you can see on the bottom there, this won't be as part of this phase, but we're leaving space for a future trail connection to go underneath Midway during a future phase. Right now, there's going to be a trail that'll go on crossing at grade up on the top level, but there's plans for a future phase that would go underneath here. So materials used here, instead of brick or the limestone pattern that we saw on the other bridges, these columns would have more of that WPA style stone work like we see in Oakdale and Kenwood Park there. So similar stone look to that, and that would also be on the slope that goes from the river up to the top of the bridge there too. So similar elements as far as the stone work there. And then the YMCA bridge is just one of the shorter bridges in the corridor, but it is a very important connection for the kids that go between the YMCA and Kenwood Cove. It's an important connection for them to make, and then there will be a lighted walkway, crosswalk for them to get over to Kenwood Cove there, so it's a little safer connection for them. But again, it would have similar columns to what we saw on the previous Midway Bridge. On those triangular wing walls that come out, we anticipate using a pattern as you see on the top there, kind of ripples and, invokes movement of water, and that's what we were going with there, is just a foam liner on the concrete wing wall that'll have some texture to it. And we can use lighting on that to create different shadows and a nice aesthetic appearance there. The last one, it's technically a bridge because the opening's wide enough, but it's really two side-by-side box culverts, as Eric mentioned there. This is what an image of that could look like. So side-by-side, 12-foot wide openings. The trail on the left there, and the water box on the right. You'll see a big retaining wall on the right there as well. So that leads up to the Kawasaki dealership that's there currently, and then that would have a nice fence and railing on top of it, so they wouldn't, folks don't fall over the edge there. But that's the idea there. Along the side of the trail, you can see some of the landscaping there. That's the idea. We don't want a manicured slope there. It'll all be the native materials that don't require a weekly mowing or a lot of maintenance there once it's established. So that's kind of the idea throughout here. All right, so 4th Street Plaza. You may recognize this image from the previous efforts. So this is the area we're talking about. It's changed a little bit since this image was taken. So what is included in this phase is the boardwalk on the bottom, and then the street on the top that you see the food truck on. But the steps that you see kind of transitioning from the top to the bottom is going to be a future project. It'll happen hopefully here in conjunction with the construction of this one, but it's being funded by a different source. So it's not part of the project we're talking about today, but it is planned to occur here. So I'm going to talk about the boardwalk later, though. So just wanted you to see a visual of what that boardwalk looks like down there. All right, so 4th Street Plaza right there at 4th and Iron. So it's one of the closest points to downtown and Santa Fe Avenue, right at 4th and Iron. So you can see some of the existing photos there on the right. That's where the car museum is, that old gas station you see on the corner there. The white building in the top right, that's right at the corner there. It's right next to the old flower nook. But it also has a railroad going right through the middle of it, which causes its own set of challenges. But yeah, just want to get into, that's the location of that particular plaza. But we see this as being a nice gathering space for the community. It's right there at the Iron Avenue Bridge. So here's the vision for what Eric was calling the complete street. I call it a shared space street. We're envisioning a curbless environment, so there's no physical curbs there that help direct the cars where they're going. We're using other features to help make that transition between what is allowed to be used by motorists versus pedestrians or bicyclists. So we're using things like bollards and vegetation and light poles and benches and large limestone blocks. Just a whole bunch of other features besides curbs to help prevent the folks from driving offline there. And although it's as wide as a typical roadway is, we're visually narrowing that by using bands of concrete on either side. It might be hard to see from there, but as well as the middle. So we basically turn a 24-foot roadway into two 9-foot lanes. So that visual narrowing of the roadway causes the motorists to slow down as well. The crosswalk you see in the bottom right there with the number 6, if you can read that, that's aligned with the 4th Street entrance into the car museum. So that's kind of the southern terminus of what we're talking about here, would be the car museum steps that go down from their entrance off of 4th Street there. What you see grayed out and kind of in the top there would be that future project. So that project, along with those steps I showed you a couple of slides ago, the steps that go down to the boardwalk, is all that separate project. So what's anticipated to go in that project is a playground, a pavilion space, a water veneer type of project, as well as some other seating areas. So all that will be that separate project, but it's adjacent to this plaza area. So we see this location as being the area that can be closed off from traffic with bollards in the roadway. And I'll go to the next slide. This takes a look at it from the north. So this is Iron Avenue looking to the south. You can see the old the gas station there with the white building on the right, kind of blocked out there. But in the middle of the roadway, you see those 3 vertical bollards there. So those can be removed or put in place when there's an event to have that street closed off. It's hard to see the boardwalk there. You can kind of see it on the up to the water there. This is why I showed that first slide that showed that a little better. So that boardwalk is included and the street is included, but that transition from the street down to the boardwalk is not included here. We do have a set of stairs over at 3rd Street that'll access that boardwalk until this interim project goes into place there. All right, some of the other areas are these canoe kayak launches, and this is just one example of what those sometimes look like here. So this one has a set of steps with some raised railings, and those railings are used to put your canoe or kayak on kind of at your hip level there, so you're not reaching all the way down to the ground. It's a little easier to manage if you have somebody in the front, somebody in the back. Helps transition that slope a little better there. But there's 4 locations that we're showing canoe and kayak launches to be located. The first one is Lakewood Lake, and that big circle on the top right. Left of that would be the Riverside Park connection. South of that would be at the Oakdale Park. So Oakdale Park is where the maintenance facility is, where they would store the boats and some of the other items needed for maintenance along the river there. That will have a boat ramp as part of that. That boat ramp will not be open to the public. It's just for the maintenance boats, so it'll be blocked off when they're not using it. But adjacent to that boat ramp will be another one of these canoe kayak launches. So although you can't drive a trailer there and get a boat there, you can bring your canoe or kayak there and bring it down adjacent to that boat ramp. And then the YMCA is the last location. So this is located just on the east side of their existing parking lot. So that's kind of the location we're looking at for those. Here's some other examples. So if you look at the 2 middle photos there, that's what we intend to put in Lakewood Lake there. So that's floating right on the lake itself. Has a little bench there to help transition somebody from a wheelchair into a kayak. And the kayak is in, it's held in by rails, so it's not going to tip when somebody's trying to get into it. It sometimes is a problem if you're trying to do it within a river that's flowing. So that's intended for Lakewood Lake. And then again, these other photos are just potential examples on what those other locations could look like. The one on the right shows raised metal railings to help move the boats down, and the 2 on the left are more of a wooden planks to do the same thing. So lighting is another big issue here. We talked about the color changing lights downtown. People love that. So here's some of the options that we've came up with to be utilized here, and these aren't going to be everywhere. The 6 or the 7, 8 photos you see on the left there are in specific locations, not all throughout. You can see the color changing lights. That might be appropriate at the Iron Avenue Bridge. We see some the bollards there in the top left. Those are the lighted bollards. Those will be along the 4th Street project we just showed you. In the middle top there, you can see some of the overhead kind of crisscrossing festival lights, we call them, or catenary lights. There's a couple of the plazas downtown that have that type of lighting. Also some uplighting of retaining walls or vegetation to help add some visual interest to certain trees or vegetation or walls. And again, playing with the shadows and the textures to create interest with those. And then various things like lighting steps or benches, like you see in some of those plazas downtown as well, that has the lighting built right into it. So the 3 standard lights we'll see throughout the project are the 3 that you see on the right there. So the light on the top right there that's on top of the post, that'll be located on top of the bridges, as well as the boardwalk and 4th Street, lining 4th Street there. The one to the left of that has the short overhanging arm, that's the fixture that's going to go along the trail, along the multi-use trail project. And then the one on the bottom right is a taller roadway light, really used where we need that extra lighting at intersections to provide that safety element so people can see as they're making their way along those intersections. So site furnishings is the next item that we looked at. Again, we wanted to have a family of materials that all tied together throughout the corridor. This is a shot from downtown there and the Santa Fe Avenue and those features. Looking at the top left, the benches that we're looking at for this project, you see 3 different pictures there. And again, if you remember back to those 3 districts we talked about earlier, each one of those districts have its own bench. And the difference between the benches is just the pattern that makes up the back. So the downtown benches will have that Art Deco pattern. The ones in Lakewood Park or Lakewood Lake area will have that grass big blue stem pattern, and then the ones in the city parks and the neighborhoods area will have that pattern that you see on the bridges in those locations. Below that photo is removable bollards. So these are the ones we're showing in 4th Street there. So you can put them in place in the ground there. There's a key that locks them in place, and they can be removed when there's not an event going on and be stored. Below that is the bicycle rack we're looking at using there throughout the project. Top middle, that is from I think Phillips Plaza downtown there, but use of limestone blocks as a seating alternative, ties into that more naturalistic aesthetic. The two below that say future next to them, that'll be in that park area that we see along 4th Street as that simultaneous project here. So a more a pavilion space that's covered and more permanent. We looked at some options that would have fabric sails or things that could be removable, but the committee we were working with thought a more permanent solution would look better there. So that's what we're proposing there. Top right is the trash can that's been chosen here, and then the bottom two show various fencing. One for safety fencing and one more for at the top of retaining walls and things. All right, so the multimodal hub, that's the location right out here where the new Midway Bridge will be coming in. The multimodal hub, and this is part of what we had to do to get this grant, was provide alternatives to transportation, right? So within this multimodal hub, there's going to be a parking lot with some of these features you see on the right. There's going to be spaces for electric vehicle charging, be a bus stop in there for the city buses to go in and out. There'll be spots for carpooling cars to park at. Also spaces for the rideshare vehicles to wait at. And then the bicycle trail goes right through there. So it's a good trailhead location where you can park your car, take your bike off, and you can get on the trail system right there, go either direction. Also an opportunity, like we have in a couple other locations around town, where there's the opportunity to have some bike sharing stations there as well that you can rent bikes. There's just a potential option of what those could look like. So the main sidewalk you see going through there would be the trail itself. Then you can see some of the other features that might be in this multimodal hub. On the left there is a covered space that has a bike repair station. So these are things that have a lot of the different wrenches and tools you need to repair a flat or tighten your handlebars. It has all those various tools right there in a station that you could work on your bike without getting too dirty, I guess. And again, there'd be drinking fountains, and the bus stop is in the background there. Also location for some signage and wayfinding opportunities there as well. So the trails is the next big, or last big item I'm going to talk about. So this is a picture of the YMCA trail, just as about a year and a half old now, 10-foot wide paved concrete trails. That's what we're envisioning for all or most of our off-street trails in this phase. There's one exception as it goes along Front Street, but by and large, 10-foot paved trail is what we're looking at there. So the overall trail map here, from the levee, from Billburg Park on the south there, all the way through the river until it meets up with the levee on the top of the screen there, is about 6.3 miles of trail. And then there's about another additional 2 miles along the existing levee to make that complete loop of roughly 8 miles or so. Within that number is also, that includes the existing YMCA trail, it includes the existing trail by the middle school as well. So not all of that 6.3 miles is part of this project because they're already in place. The other thing I want to mention is there's some different configurations throughout. I mentioned the 10-foot concrete trail is the preferred option, but we can't fit that everywhere. In some locations between Elm Street and Walnut Street, and then it'll go on Front Street there. That'll be an 8-foot wide trail. It's because we're working within the existing right-of-ways there, and just trying to fit a 10-foot trail in a limited space there was a little challenging. So we narrowed it to the minimum allowed under the federal guidelines we're going from, which is 8 feet. So, and then there's some locations where we're utilizing the existing pavement with a shared lane. So you've probably seen those little lane markings out here around town where you got those little arrows and the bicycle symbol. Those are called sharrows. So there's some locations where we have sharrows as well to make this. So just zooming in a little bit here. So the top right you can see the solid green line, that's the existing levee trail there. So what we're talking about putting in new would be those dotted green lines that come off the trail. You can see the crossing there where we cross the existing channel of the Smoky Hill. So that'll be the one location of the pedestrian bridge. And then just to the north of that, not shown as well here, but that's where that connection to Lakewood Lake and the Smoky Hill River is going to happen there. So that'll be another pedestrian bridge there. As we go to the south out and get away from the lake a little bit, there's a small parking lot there. And that's kind of where we will go from an off-street condition to the Sharrow, where we're going to use the existing pavement there. And that's where you can see these better. We'll have some boards out later you guys can come take a look at, but that'll be, the shared space or the shared lane. Then it connects across over to the Lakewood Middle School, and that's the solid green line there. Crosses the existing pedestrian bridge to the west side of the channel there. And then that's where we start to dive down as we're nearing Ohio to go underneath Ohio with the box culvert there to improve that crossing for the middle school students. Following along the north side of Riverside Drive and the green chunk on the left there is Riverside Park. So we go through Riverside Park, and that's where that canoe kayak launch will be there. We'll cross Elm Street at grade, so it'll be at grade crossing improvement there, crosswalk. Same thing, then from Elm to Ash, it goes behind some of those houses that are there. So between those houses and the river, going to squeeze a trail in there. Once it gets to Ash Street, it crosses at grade again, so there'll be an improved crosswalk situation there. And then the line that goes south of that, that's where we start that 8-foot wide side path adjacent to Front Street there. So it'll be on the east side of the road down to Iron Avenue. It'll cross Iron Avenue at the existing crosswalk, which has a flashing beacon there for making that crossing a little safer. Once we get south of Iron Avenue is where it shifts to the west side of the road. So then it's on the west side of the road from Iron all the way down to Walnut here. So Walnut's in the top left on this page. Follows, on side of the road there until we get to Mulberry. So Mulberry, once we cross that bridge, then we're using one of the park roads there, low traffic volumes, so it's fairly safe. And it kind of goes around back behind where the band shell is. There's a little cul-de-sac there. It'll from the cul-de-sac, then it goes off-road again and has that 10-foot wide configuration again. We're crossing from Oakdale Park over to Kenwood Park on an existing pedestrian bridge. Once we get over to the Kenwood Park side, kind of right in front of Tony's over here, then we're there. That'll tie into the multimodal hub that I just talked about earlier, using a lot of those existing Kenwood Park loop roads, again on the street itself, existing pavement, until we get to pretty close to the YMCA Drive. That's where the Master Gardeners are currently located now. Those folks are going to be relocated closer to where the Midway Bridge is going in. So we'll go through that current Master Gardeners area, crossing the YMCA there with the new bridge, and then that ties into the newly constructed YMCA trail there where you see the solid green line there. So there is a gap between the end of that YMCA trail and Ohio Street. That's going to be a separate project that the city and Friends of the River are working on funding as well. But we will take it up. Those are the lighter green lines, if you can see that well. But we will be picking up, that's where those twin box culverts will be there at South Ohio, going underneath the road. And then as Eric mentioned, it follows the alignment of the existing soft surface trail that's I think it was forget the name of that street, is it Gypsum or something? But yeah, it follows the west side of the channel on the west side of Bilberg Park. And then where the end of the dotted lines are, that's where it ties into the existing system there. So that's all I got for the fun stuff. Now you guys talk about some of the property real estate issues.
All right, so Martha did a great job of talking through the financial aspects of the project, and then we go to Eric, and Eric talks about engineering, and Troy talks to us about the aesthetics. I'm here to talk about the people side of the business, and that's both ultimately real property acquisition. Under the United States Constitution, the Fifth Amendment basically guarantees that if a government needs to acquire land, it has to happen with just compensation. And so to do that in 1970, Congress passed, I'm going to call it the Uniform Act. There's a long title, and if you want to come see me later, I can tell you what it is, but it's just called the Uniform Act. That's what everybody refers to it in the business. But basically what it does, it outlines the process by which a government entity has to acquire real estate. And so it's managed at the federal level by the Federal Highway Administration. It flows down to KDOT, which ultimately flows down to the city of Salina. So for this, in order to build any kind of infrastructure project, sometimes you have to acquire real estate. And so in order to do that, thankfully on this project, the vast majority of the path, we're looking at a lot of city-owned property and undevelopable ground. But you can see with the purple and the green, there are some locations where real estate rights do need to be acquired. So I'm the real estate team lead for this. I'll be leading that effort. So here's the process, right? So they did all their work and created a set of right-of-way plans, which basically identifies what those real estate rights need to be in order to do this project. So the first step, once we have those plans in place, we obtain title information for each affected landowner, each affected parcel. We provide notices to those landowners. Then it goes through a valuation process. So there's an appraisal notification that occurs. There's appraisals that happen. There is a provision in the Uniform Act that basically allows, if the value of the land to be acquired is less than $15,000, they can go through what's called a waiver valuation, which actually helps save the city and the taxpayers money. But basically, there's methodology there, and so we get appraisal reviews on the ones that are over 15,000. We do waiver valuations on anything under 15,000. From that, an offer package is created. So then, at that point in time, our negotiators go and meet with those affected landowners, walk them through the easement or the acquisition documents that are needed in order to do this, walks them through the project, walks them through the valuation, how everything happened, and we go through a negotiation process. One thing with this is there is an opportunity for landowners to donate the real estate rights to the city, if that's something that's of interest to you. So hopefully, our goal anytime we negotiate is to negotiate in good faith with landowners and come to a reasonable conclusion, right? Sometimes that doesn't happen, and we go through a mediation process after that. So we're hoping to be substantially complete with a lot of our right-of-way or our real estate acquisition efforts by November of 2025. But we have to be done by April of 2026, because in May of 2026, we want to have this project get certified so that the city can move forward and get the project let. So that's ultimately the process that happens. Again, we're getting ready to do our open house area. So a couple things about that, just kind of some housekeeping. They've got some snacks and beverages over there for you. I do know there's comment cards back there. In any public infrastructure project, feedback is the best thing, right? You just saw that. I think it was one of your first slides, Martha, where the feedback from the community has helped make this project better as it's gone along. So if you've got some comments, please, add those comments, drop them in that blue box back there. So we're gonna have various stations here. So that first station there, you're gonna have the project overview, schedule, and cost. Martha will be there. And then the next, essentially 5 boards you're gonna have the trails, the roads, and the bridges. And that's where Jim and Troy will be located. And then these last 2 over here, the real estate sections, I'll be there. John Harvey, your city surveyor, and Eric Dubb will be there as well. So, Martha, you want to take it from here?
To wrap up the presentation portion of this, I really have to say thank you for being here. It's great to see this many people here listening and learning about the project. And the next big excitement we'll have is a bid letting and then dirt will move. I see a couple people in the audience that carry shovels in their truck and can't wait to break ground and move dirt. Lloyd, I'm not talking about you, so, but there's several that are really excited about getting the project going. So thank you for being here. Grab some snacks, fill out comments cards, and then just go to the individual stations. They'll have larger maps. It'll be a little easier for you to see. If you don't feel comfortable about asking your question there, your comment, write it on one of the cards and put it in the box. There's also a QR code that you can go out to our website and you can fill it out on the website and do that from home. And if this was so much fun and you want to see it again, it'll be on TV, the local station. So watch it as many times as you want. And thanks for being here.